Hello and welcome back. In the last video I laid out my 7-day Bible reading challenge to get through the whole thing in just a week. And in this video I'm going to share what happened, why I was doing it, what my plan was, what actually happened, and also some things that I learned from the experience as well. So let's start with why. Well, there were a few reasons, but the main impetus was that I found this article from the Bible Study magazine, which has now gone away, the whole website has gone away, and it was talking about this challenge of reading the whole Bible in a very short period of time, in fact 7 days, and specifically kind of around the Christmas period, because it's a time when people have more time if they're off work between Christmas and New Year, so it gives that opportunity. And I thought it was a really interesting idea when I first read it, and thought that I would probably have that opportunity as well, with more time, taking the time off, and also it would be before my next course started at Bible college, so I'd have time to read there. And finally, I also did think that it might be a bit noteworthy for YouTube as well, because it is something which is kind of attention grabby and interesting to try. I thought it would be even interesting to do and fail, because then that would show just what it's like. So those were my big reasons for doing it. Now my plan was to follow the same plan that I found in this article, and the same sort of breakdown of rough points where I should get to each day to manage to get through in 7 days. I also plan to use the Dwell Bible app to listen along at some moments, so that I would have that extra motivation to keep going. I won't be working my brain perhaps as much to keep concentrating on the text, but I could just listen and go through it. I also wanted to write with my pen in my Bible and take some notes, just big picture notes, like big impressions of whole books, or marking sections which I really wanted to look into later on. And I also expected some delays going through it. I noticed that the first day in this plan was about 9 or 10 hours. I didn't really think I could get 10 hours, but I thought 5 hours might be possible, and so splitting that into 2 days would be possible. So right from the start I expected that I probably wouldn't hit the 7 days, but I still thought that, if each day takes me twice as long, because I'm not the fastest reader, and I perhaps don't have that much time, and maybe I miss half the days, well, I'd still do it in a month, and that would be a really great achievement. So that was my plan. Now, the plan didn't work at all. In the end, I managed to do it in 19 days, and there's a few big reasons for that. First of all, the plan that I found wasn't a plan. It was a list of recordings of how one person had managed to read through the sections that they got through in certain times. And so there was one day where he managed to read from 1 Chronicles up to the Psalms, and including the Psalms, in one day in 5 hours, almost 6 hours. Now, I could not do that at all. The Psalms would take me almost that long on its own. So I had to change my plan with what I was going to read and the points where I was going to aim for. And I started to use Dwell's apps, their timings for each book, and wrote down my own plan based on those timings. So here is my scrappy written version with the breakdowns of exactly where it should go. So I used that to calculate where I should be aiming for, and that helped along with the first part. The next issue was that I didn't have as much free time as I had anticipated. It was a very busy Christmas time with lots of stuff going on with family, friends, and messages and church as well. And so I just didn't have as much time at the start to read as I had hoped. So that really affected things too. And so then I was getting into the point of time where I was working again as well, and so that also reduced the amount of free time. So basically that made everything stretch a lot more, but I did manage to keep reading. I did take some high-level notes, and I did use the audio Bible a fair bit, and in fact there were moments where I was just listening to the audio Bible and not following along in text as well, so that I could make up for the time. So my thoughts on the whole experience. I'm really glad I did it, even though I didn't manage to get the timings right at all. it was really amazing to see this whole big picture of the Bible condensed into a short space of time. And when you're going through things like the various gospel accounts, it's much easier to notice the similarities, the differences between them as you're going along. Like, for example, this time I really noticed how John actually seems to show that some Pharisees are kind of like positive towards Jesus, while all the others seem to be like very negative on the Pharisees. All the Pharisees are against Jesus. In the other accounts, they all seem very unified. In John's account, he talks about not just Nicodemus, but there are a few occasions where the Pharisees disagree with themselves. So that was really interesting to notice. Also, it was interesting to see themes which I kind of knew about, it being in the Old Testament and coming up a couple of times. It was really interesting to actually see them come up, like about the Good Shepherd coming up from Old Testament then into the New Testament. And that's the kind of thing that you can pick up on when you're just going through really quickly. Some books also really stood out to me as really impressive and I really want to dive into. Isaiah in particular was one where I really want to go back to. I think one of my challenges later in the year is going to be to read Isaiah again and again and really dive into it. And it's a book which I haven't dived into as much, but it was so rich and so interesting to go through. Some things I don't think worked so well in this condensed nature, like Psalms. Having them all in one chunk wasn't really the best idea, I think, because it just kind of made them merge together as one, rather than appreciating each one on its own and the poetry of each one. But there were some good signs of that, because I could see some of the structure of the Psalms when I was getting to it. So if I could go back in time and give myself some words of warning, some advice before I'd started, I think I would tell myself these things. One, use the plan that I made rather than the plan I found, because it was much more realistic and accounts for these different time intervals, groupings together. It's far easier to do. The second thing I would tell myself is to take 14 days and plan for 14 days instead. 7 days was just too short for me. Even with that motivation of the short time period, giving myself a longer period of time would have felt a lot better. But I did have the advantage of this mindset that I knew I wasn't going to hit the goal dead on, and I didn't mind that. I kind of wanted to see what would happen anyway. So it didn't affect me too badly, but it might affect someone else. And I think if I was telling someone else, I probably might also tell them to go for 30 days, because that's a far easier amount of reading that you have to do each day than 14 days. I think 30 days is tough but realistic. 14 days is really tough, and you've got to have a real drive. 7 days is possible, but I don't think most people could do it, because you're looking at about 12 hours of reading a day, 12 hours of listening to an audio Bible a day. So if you could read faster, which most people can, then you're going to still be looking at 6 or 5 hours a day. I hope you found this video useful. Maybe you joined in with the challenge, in which case I'd love to see your comments below to see how you found it, and I look forward to sharing the next challenge, which will be coming up soon. So if you'd like to check out that next challenge, then make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified when that video comes out. I hope to see you in the next one.